there's a lot of stories that I could tell about caring. That's why I signed up late, because I had to cycle through these things. And one thing I can tell you about caring is that there's a lot of different reasons how and why we care about something. And one way to know what you care about is to make friends with a photographer like Disto, and they'll tell you what you care about within 10 minutes of meeting you, because something about them will, like, you know, a picture can tell you what you care about without saying a single word. And there's these moments that we all have where we say, what do we really care about? And I remember being on the creek one morning, back when they used to invite me on before I put in parking meters, where I was sitting there with Tony and Brad and Charles, and it was the first time this sentence spilled out of my mouth, and it was almost instinctively, but it's that caring is a lot different than complaining. And a lot of what we do that we project as caring is complaining. If you can tweet it, that's not caring. I'm sorry, care doesn't fit into 140 characters. Like, doesn't fit in 280, I'm sorry. Caring can't fit. And one of the words that comes up a lot when we talk about caring in public policy is a word that has become almost meaningless in our society. And this is dangerous, but it's also a word that helped me get a girlfriend, is gentrification. I've been accused of that.
Uh-oh. Parking meters?
Parking meters on gentrification. Thank you, Chris Smith. But no, so y'all have heard about the Mill Hill project.
Yes.
And this is a project that is so full of intentionality, so full of promise, so full of a lot of things. But when we started in 2014, the area that is now known as Mill Hill was depressed. It was sad. And one of the first property owners I met in Mill Hill was a guy, isn't worth mentioning, but his last name was Lowe, and that's what he was. He owned 4 properties in Mill Hill. You know how many leases he had? 0. Do you know how many tenants he had? 12. Again, when we talk about gentrification, let's be honest. So these were all people who felt like they had some type of ownership, felt like they had something. And when we met them where they were, a lot of high-minded principles that I believed came crashing down to earth. Because in that moment, when I met these people, there was another family who, and get this is how effed up our system is. I met a family who thought they owned their home.
What?
Thought they owned their home. Guess what we found out? They had signed a 20-year lease-to-own agreement with the option on the mortgagee side to kick out of it any time. Guess when they did it? 1 year after they purchased the home. Our system's effed up, y'all. But anyway, this is a story about the Temples. The first time I met the Temples, lived at 227 Shell Avenue. It's now a owner-occupied house. I walked in and I met Jeff and Sherry Temple and their son, who went by the name of Peter, whose real name was not Peter. And we had recently acquired their home. And we're like, well, let's let you stay here. Let's see what we need to do. I walked in the door for the first time, and I walked into a tarp. The living room ceiling had caved in. I asked when that happened. About 13 months ago. Did you tell Mr. Lowe? Yeah, but he didn't care. I go into the next room and I see the oven open. The only source of heat in the entire house is the oven. I go into the next room and it's the only bedroom in the house. I find the bathroom doesn't work. Hasn't worked in months. And we made a promise. We wouldn't displace anybody from this neighborhood. So the complainer might say, you kick someone out of their home. But the carer might say, what do you do when you're addressed with that? So what did I do? What did the Urban Development Authority do? We found them a place to rent with a lease for the same amount they were paying Mr. Lowe in cash every month, 3 blocks away in the Fort Hill neighborhood. We paid their moving expenses, we paid their deposit, we paid their first month's rent, and when I went and met them at their new home, Jeff Temple, who I didn't know a day in my life before I walked in and had a tarp hit me in my face, said, "I don't think you understand what this meant to us. Because we thought we were never going to leave that house. We were never going to have a chance. We were hoping that our tax refund would give us enough to have a deposit to move somewhere else. But for 2 years that hadn't happened." And months later, it was thrown in my face that we didn't fulfill our promise of not displacing anyone from that neighborhood, that we gentrified that neighborhood. But I ask you, what would the carer do? I think it would look a lot more like what we did than what the complainers might say. Think about that.